So, welcome to this meeting of the Grafton Board of Registrars. Notice to all in attendance, this meeting is being videotaped by Grafton Cable Television. The meeting will now come to order. The time is, anyone? 12:02 p.m. I will now call the roll call. Lisa Yitz.
Here.
Jack Bonina.
Here.
Candy LaValle. Candy is absent, and Dan Fitzgerald is here. So, having a quorum present, we will start with our first agenda item. Recap of the November 5th federal and state election. So, I know, Jack, this is something that interested you.
Yep. Yeah, I thought it would be appropriate for us to review how the election went, the numbers, percentages, those kinds of things.
Sure.
So we'll have to defer that to the next
I
meeting.
think we're probably going to have to. Although we did get an email, right? Candy sent an email with numbers. It wasn't the final
minimal,
day, but it was.
yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I think compared to it was comparative to. I do have it. I do have some.
I think it was 20%.
Which was comparable to the state in general, right? It was a comparison with Grafton's percentages
For
as
early
opposed
voting.
to the state
Almost
percentages.
30, almost 30%, which was,
Yeah, so I think it was
that
close.
was good.
But that was nice. That
Yeah.
was good that she, and then they still had a day left, if I'm not mistaken, with early in person when she sent it. I think that was on a Friday, and they still had it. But it was good to get it. I was appreciative that she sent it along for us, so that was great.
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, discuss Board of Registrars end of year report. So I think I put this on there just to, touch base with it. Again, we don't need to. She's probably not. Candy's not going to be looking for our compilation of it until January. And some of these statistics that she passed along in that, I think we'll go into that. They fit nicely with what we wanted to do as far as that whatever other town it does, how it was formatted. Some of those statistics that she gave us, I think, will be helpful. They'll plug right into that thing.
Good.
So I have been looking at it, and so I it's short of statistics, I think one of the things that's on there is the registered voters at the end of the year, which, again, I'll ask Candy for that come December 31st. That's all we'll know. But, for the most part, I think we have a lot of the stuff we need to get it going.
Yeah, you were going to do a draft of one.
And I will,
and
and I will still do that. So I'm on top of that too. Okay? Review open meeting law complaint. So, a lot of the stuff was in the packet. I don't know if everybody's familiar with how the packet works. So when we put our agenda up on the town website, then we haven't utilized the packet before, but I thought it was good because we did have a lot of stuff with regards to this to let people see what the complaint was and kind of get a grasp of, to be completely transparent and open to see what it is that, the issue was for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the game plan with regards to that. So a couple of housekeeping things. I became aware that we could have talked about this in executive session, which, I'm not, I think we all to some extent are kind of new to this whole thing, but because it's a complaint against us, we could have done it in private and talked about it. We would have had to keep minutes and go through that. So I just want to make sure. I was neglectful, I guess, because if we did it, we would have had to put it on the agenda. So if either of you have a feeling that you would have liked to have done that, we're going to have to figure something out. But I personally have no interest necessarily in going to executive session. That's just how I feel about it.
We can talk openly
Fine
about
as
it.
well. Yeah.
Perfect. The other piece is we can request an extension of the deadline. So I thought in terms of this, of questions, right? So part of the process is that the people that the complaint is filed against can ask questions of the complainant. I thought that was a little bit tricky because Candy's part of our board, and so any conversation with Candy with regards to questioning, I was a little fearful that could be considered, I not necessarily deliberation, but perhaps is that a violation? So I guess my hope was that we could handle the question parts at this meeting. We're an open meeting, not a problem. but Candy couldn't make it, so we're not afforded the opportunity really to ask her questions about her complaint or what she sees as a remedy. If you guys are okay with that we don't have that ability, I'm good too. Like I had a couple questions, but I'm good. But
So you don't want to raise any questions right now?
well, I could, but they'd be unanswered. You know what I mean? I could, and I think any questions I had is going to come out in us talking about the complaint and so forth. You know what I mean?
Now, there were some timelines on this, though.
Sure.
So, do you want to talk about that? I mean, that we had to do this, we had to have a meeting by a certain timeline, 14
Correct.
days from the date of the complaint, I believe it was.
14 business days, right?
Business
So
days.
that's
So,
and so we're within that window.
we are,
Yes,
okay.
14 business days.
Because it was the 21st that she filed it, correct?
So you don't feel we're in the window.
Well, no, I mean, that would be,
So the 22nd,
And-
the clock ticks.
today's, okay, you sure about that?
Well, okay. Do you want to call it the 21st that the clock ticks?
Well, she filed the complaint.
I know when I
Yeah.
get that she filed it, but she didn't ask that I recognize the complaint, and as I recall, I didn't read it till the next day. But that's okay. Let's stick
Okay.
to when if we go with 21, so as you go across, so if you want to call it 21, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, that's 5 days. 28, 29, 30, 31, 1, that's 10 days. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's if you go by the mindset that you want to consider the 21st. When I missed it by a day, so I considered it 23 as day 1.
Okay, no,
So 1, 2, 3.
but either way,
Yep.
we have to respond to this within 14, and if we don't respond to it today, then we're in violation of it because we
I have
won't-
every intention of responding to it today.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay,
And so this becomes. I'll leave it at that, and then we can talk about a little bit more about that. But I appreciate your concern.
yeah, no,
Absolutely.
I just feel that was filed against us. We need to have a response to it. You
Yeah,
know,
and
so-
we will. This
Yeah.
this is why we're meeting today to talk about it and craft our response.
Very good.
Perfect.
Okay, just trying to clarify.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay.
The third housekeeping matter, I was in touch with Candy about additional complaints because my concern was that because she indicated there was more than one person, arguably that was either saw us in the room or that arguably could have been as a result of that a complainant. I was fearful that there might be a subsequent complaint filed, and I was hopeful we could address this all at once. And so Candy indicated to me in an email, I have it, but she said, yeah, no, if there are no other complaints, she's the only complaint. We should not expect another complaint to be filed.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
The caveat to that is that it's when the clock can start when the alleged offense is the date of the alleged offense, or it starts when someone's made aware of it. But I still don't think there's any fear of, right? So if someone's made aware of it after the first. The infraction happened on the 1st. Someone's made aware of it on the 5th. Okay, so then their clock starts from that point in time, their 30-day clock.
Okay.
But I just want to, I'm just trying to get everything out there, everything I learned with regards to it. So I just wanted to touch on that. Jack?
Well, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem. I was going to bring up something else, but
All right. So you feel free to.
okay. So the complaint was from Candy,
Yep.
who identified herself as an individual and
Yep.
not an organization, but she uses her address of the municipal center and her email address. So, is she filing as a clerk or is she filing as an individual?
I guess that's a little bit conflicting. I don't, and I appreciate our attention to detail on this. I guess it's somewhat of a conflict, but I think that she checks individual. I think because I think in the email, so in the email she talked about in the email she sent us notifying us about Let me read that. So I have also decided to look into self-report from the registrar staying in the meeting room from October 1 meeting. That is the right thing to do. So she uses the term self-report. So I think that added to the confusion, right? It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
so if we're self-reporting, is it all of us or? So
Yeah.
really, that's not what happened here. She's the complainant. This isn't a self-report, nor is there, in speaking with the AG's office, there's really no such thing as a self-report. You either report, you can report it as an organization, which is I think what you were getting at, right?
Yeah.
If she had checked the
Right.
organization
She
box,
represents
that would make
the
sense
person.
that she would have put, but that she didn't. She checked individual,
Right.
right? And so even though it leads to some confusion, I don't want to get too much caught in the weeds here. So, like, I'm not looking to like have this extended on a technicality or anything like that, and I don't think you are either. Right?
No,
So it's a point of.
Yeah,
I guess it's a fair point.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it goes to the heart of the complaint.
I completely agree with you.
You know,
I do. I
that's the
really
issue.
do.
And it really, I don't know. Okay, so
Yeah, no, I completely
so
agree.
how are we going to address that?
So why don't we do this? Why don't we read the complaint into the record, although it's in the packet, which I really think serves as it's part of the record, right? It's in the agenda packet. So, but we'll read it. So, Candy, on 10/1/2024, the Board of Registrars had a scheduled meeting in conference room A of the Municipal Center. At the end of the meeting, members John Bonina, Dan Fitzgerald, and Lisa Yates stayed in the room having conversations as a quorum. Although it was stated that there was no discussion of the items discussed at the meeting, the board was engaging in discussion as a quorum, and a couple individuals, including Town Clerk Andy LaValle, noticed the group in the conference room. Ms. LaValle told the board they should not be in the meeting room as a group, in parentheses, quorum, conversating after a meeting. It gives the appearance of a violation, and Mr. Fitzgerald acknowledged the appearance, and the group soon left. So that's the narrative. So I guess part of our thing is, how do we feel about the narrative? Do we feel it's a truthful narrative?
It's the appearance of is the thing I think that raises questions for me because what is it that if the meeting was over and Candy left the meeting and we acknowledged the meeting was over, then how could we be having a quorum of a meeting? I mean, even though it's the appearance, I get the appearance piece, but there was no clarity to it.
So with regards to what you just said, we could still, so even if Candy left and we adjourned the meeting and we had 3 people here, which is a quorum for our board, and I said, hey, at our next meeting, we need to talk about X because I'm really committed to X and I really think you guys should agree with me. That's a violation of open meeting law. You know what I mean? We have a quorum and we're having, whether it's me or you or all of us, I said something that would really should be left for an open meeting for deliberation, and I provided an opinion. So the fact that we potentially could have been in violation, that's absolutely, I think the statement is truthful. I believe outside of the, it's still truthful to say when she came in, as my recollection of it was when Candy came in, she said she thought she forgot something in the room. And then we were all here and we had been conversing. We were all here, Candy, and then as she left, before she left, she apparently didn't find what she needed to find. And she suggested to the group, this is my recollection, she said, hey, you guys might want to be careful. I'm not sure the exact phraseology, but it was like, because, it could give the appearance that you're in violation of open meeting law. At which point I said, you're right. It gives the appearance. Agreed, right? And so, but that did happen. Like, and she did put it in here.
Yeah.
It gives the appearance of a violation.
Yeah.
And I did acknowledge
The
it. It's just like,
appearance,
understanding, yep, that's a mistake on my part. Or, it's just like, I should have done a better job to say, come on, guys, we get out of here. You know what I mean? But it did give the appearance.
Right. But my question is, appearance is not a violation.
Correct.
I can come, any one of us can, as soon as John walked into the room, you and I were already here, that was fine. As soon as John walked into the room, that's an appearance that we could be having a quorum before
Correct.
the meeting starts. So
That is correct.
I'm curious to know, what is the behavior that should be followed? Should one of us stand out into the room and not, and until the meeting is ready to start? I mean, what's
Yeah.
the proper procedure that should be recommended for us not to have an appearance of a quorum and deliberating?
It's a good point. It's a fair point.
And that's my question.
Sure.
Because
And
to me, an appearance
I
is
second
not,
that.
Right.
based on other people involved in town committees for over 30 years. This is not something that's ever come up.
So I agree with what you're saying, and that conversation came up when I spoke to the Attorney General, the Assistant Attorney General, and she made it very clear, the appearance of a violation is not a violation. She said as much.
Okay.
And I actually read her verbatim the complaint, and she too felt as though the complaint, because there's nothing in here to indicate what it is she felt we did. Like my example, right? Where I want to deliver next week, I want this on, and I want it because, like, she didn't say, I heard Dan say those words, and as a result of that, should be completely correct. But she didn't say that. What she's basically saying is, you're all together as a quorum, and I feel it gave the appearance. Well, that's not a violation according to the Attorney General's office.
It's,
But it is what it
pretty
is,
logical.
right? It is
Yeah.
what it is, and you know, so.
So,
But I do understand, right? And again, so not only did we have that, but as I touched on, we did have her email too, right? In the email, I have also decided to look into self-report from the registrars staying in the meeting room. She doesn't say and deliberating or and, right? It's just like, so it's pretty clear, and she's not here, so I'm not trying to, right? So, but it's pretty clear that it's the fact that we were all together as a quorum in a room is what the concern was, and it gave the appearance of a violation.
point well taken.
Yeah, right? I agree, right? That's how I feel about it too. Point well taken. So,
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Review the complaint. So we did that. We talked about her email and what it was. So a couple of points, and I think we've touched on some of this. It's okay to communicate outside of a meeting to distribute meeting agenda, schedule information, procedural information, reports, and documents, right? So, like, if with regards to meeting agenda, it says without rationale. So if the conversation we had in the room was, I'd like to just plan our next agenda, that's okay because it's an exception to open meeting law violation. Even though we're in a quorum, we can do that. Much like scheduling information. If I'd said, how's everybody's schedule look for next week? We're good to go. That's scheduling, right? This is my understanding of it. And so that's that part of it. There are exceptions to open meeting law, even though you have a quorum, right? And so one of the other issues that I think in trying to try to get to the heart of the complaint really was, it happened on October 1st, and we were notified like 20 days later. So I know I'm struggling with, okay,
3 weeks.
did I say something during a meeting? Did I say something after the meeting? Like, so I really tried to drill down and do my best to have a recollection of what I might have said that could be construed as a violation. But that 21-day period it was a little bit
3
difficult,
weeks.
you know, in my previous job. Typically when something, to do a report or make a complaint, you do it immediately because you forget things. And so, I don't know if either of you struggled with the same type of thing, but because of the time lapse, I did have, you know, but I really did my best to drill down on what we were talking about.
The one thing I remember asking was how your grandchild was.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's what I remember
That's
talking-
what I remember
That's
too.
what I remember talking about, but
So I'd love to move on to that really because
And I just want to say,
Sure.
as the clerk, I appreciate the fact that she's kind of helping us to realize that, you know, we should be responsible about how the appearance should be.
I agree.
I didn't think it needed to go into an open meeting law complaint. And
I
that,
agree.
I'd love to know Candy's rationale for not just talking with us about that.
Well, and I thought when she made the comment, hey, it doesn't look good, it's like, oh, yeah, you know, thanks,
Yeah.
done.
Right.
And
We're
I
done.
thought that
Yeah.
was, yeah.
and I do think we immediately left the room, you know, in the
Yes.
narrative it talks about, you know, soon after. It's
Sure.
like, no, we acknowledged it and we're like, let's go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's a little bit ambiguous, but I think we immediately took to heart what she said and we immediately left the room. So, getting back to, yes, my recollection of our communication was, let's see. I want to say we had a general conversation of like I thought that meeting went really well, or there was some general just like
Yeah,
kind of a
socialization
patting
more
ourselves
than
on the back, or like I love when our group meets, and so so I think that was part of it. John, I think we touched on your granddaughter. I thought with Lisa, I mentioned something about, I used the term hiking at one point because we laughed about my sister-in-law, and she calls things hiking, but really it's more of a walk, and my wife goes with her.
Right.
And the other thing I do remember is the Grafton TV gentleman, Bill Robideau, came out, and I had a conversation with him as we were sitting here about using my computer in future meetings and how that would work. So honestly, I am familiar enough to understand what deliberation is. I am familiar, and what providing an opinion is, and I've really tried to think about whether I did that. But it is my belief, beyond any reasonable doubt, the discussion that I was engaged in with both Lisa and John at the conclusion of our meeting was not a violation of open meeting law. That's
I agree.
it sounds like
Agree.
you guys have that sentiment as well,
Yep.
that it's,
Yep.
we don't feel this was a violation.
No.
So that leaves us with this, right? In talking to the Attorney General, I read that and the Attorney General basically says, well, you can do one of two things. You can ask the complainant to withdraw the complaint. Well, then we start to get into my concern about, okay, is that somehow going to be viewed as I didn't, and it's okay because as you said, it's trying to do right by us, that we don't make a mistake, right? And I agree that this format, it could have been perhaps done without going through a formal complaint, but nonetheless, and so I'm okay with that. So so I didn't do that. I didn't reach out and ask her to withdraw the complaint. And the other thing was, the AG just said, but the other thing would be just have your meeting, talk about the complaint, and then just write us up what we need to do, which is a response to Candy on the complaint, the response to the Attorney General on the complaint. And what's going to happen from that point is, if Candy was dissatisfied with the write-up of this conversation and how we feel, then she could ask the Attorney General to review it, and that's one step further. But typically, I think what tends to happen is that, hopefully we'll do enough here that Candy's satisfied. And I'm going to base that on what she put in, right? So there's two parts to a complaint. The second part is, what action do you want the public to take in response to your complaint? So her first action that she would like us to do is review and acknowledge the infraction. Well, we certainly reviewed it.
Yep.
And acknowledge the infraction. The wording that's a little bit tricky to me. Because what am I acknowledging, or what would we be acknowledging? The thought would be, are we acknowledging that it gave the appearance of a violation?
Yeah. I'm not going to agree with that.
Well, I can't acknowledge what's the infraction. It's not clear in the narrative or in her
Right.
email
No.
or when she was in here. So
I'm not going to agree with the fact that it was an infraction.
right, I agree. Right. But review, we did that. Acknowledge the infraction. Okay, that's what she's asking. And then her second ask is all members retake the open meeting law training, complete the sign off, and leave all discussions of the board to a legally scheduled meeting of the board. Speaking personally, I have no issue with retaking the open meeting law training. It's easy. It's a webinar. I enjoy any type of education I can get. So I don't really have an issue with that.
Yeah.
Complete sign-offs, that's fine, right? Leave a discussion of all boards to a legally scheduled meeting. I think we do that. Again, this would lead someone to believe that, well, gee, we didn't, but I think we're in agreement that we didn't violate open meeting law, and so we do leave all discussions to the board that are in illegally scheduled meetings that would come under the complaint. Discussions, again, a discussion in and of itself isn't a violation of open meeting law.
Right.
Right, and so
We're
talking about social things. We happen to be here together. We don't meet a lot. I like being in your company. We went up and we did something at the Manor. We did stuff together at police night. I love the cohesiveness of our board, and so not everything is a violation just because we're together. So, so that being said, so then it comes a question of how do we want to move forward with us officially addressing the complaint. So I did write something up, and I'll read it, and maybe we can, whether we want to edit it, right?
Okay.
So understanding all the things that were said. So, my thought is this: what we'll probably do is make a motion if we agree to use this as the narrative that we're going to the official narrative. Registrars Dan Fitzgerald, John Bonina, and Lisa Yates acknowledge that continuing in conversation after the adjournment of the October 1, 2024 Board of Registrars meeting conveyed the appearance of a potential open meeting law violation. Although the appearance of a violation of open meeting law is not, in fact, a violation of open meeting law, we respect the concern of the complainant, town clerk, and fellow board member Candy LaValle. How does everyone feel so far about that?
Sounds great.
So far, so good. Yep.
So, furthermore, I don't say anything, but we believe this above acknowledgement fulfills condition 1 of the responsive action requested by the complainant. So, I think it does. Because I think simply, even though it doesn't qualify as a complaint, the appearance. I think we address that. Right? We acknowledge that it gives the appearance. That's all that. To me, that's all that's saying. Let me read it again. We believe this above acknowledgement fulfills condition 1 of the responsive action requested, which is that we've certainly done some of it, which is have it, just talk about what happened and then acknowledge we acknowledge that it has an appearance. Go ahead, Jack.
Well, again, it's the word infraction that gets to me.
And I don't use that in mine. I hear you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't use that in
So it's
our
hard-
response.
It's hard to fulfill number 1 if we, admit to an infraction that we don't believe existed.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
So, and if Candy felt that way too, she then has the ability to appeal, to say, "Gee, you didn't really do that," and they'd weigh in. But in my opinion, we cover it. I feel comfortable with saying we've acknowledged what it is, which is really the appearance of an infraction.
Can you read it one more time?
Sure.
Thanks.
Just the last part, right?
The first.
Okay, so the first part.
Yeah.
Yep. Registrars Dan Fitzgerald, John Bonina, and Lisa Yates acknowledge that continuing in conversation after the adjournment of the October 1 Board of Registrars meeting conveyed the appearance of a potential open meeting law violation. Although the appearance of a violation is not, in fact, a violation of open meeting law, we respect the concern of the complainant, town clerk, and fellow board member Candy LaValle.
Okay.
We believe this above acknowledgement, which is what I just read, we acknowledge, fulfills the condition 1 of the responsive action requested in the complaint. We can certainly amend this. I'm happy to,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I mean-
I believe it does. If you want to say, if we could say, we don't believe this fulfills condition 1, but nonetheless, we're going to move forward.
I think she's calling the infraction the appearance.
I think she is,
So
right?
I
it's
think that's what the infraction
ambiguous.
is, it's the appearance.
I agree.
And so we acknowledge the appearance, but that it's not a violation.
Correct.
So I'm
I didn't
comfortable.
reuse her word. I didn't say, "Oh yeah,
Right.
we
Okay.
committed an infraction."
Okay.
I kind of put
Yeah.
it in what I think is how we feel about it.
Yeah.
But I can certainly change it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, again, appearance is not an infraction.
Correct.
so that's
And we do put it in here, right? That is definitely in here. Verbatim, it's in here.
it does. But I mean, it's in your summary there that
But I don't use the term. I hear you.
yeah,
And again,
to acknowledge that an appearance is not an infraction, I think is something that she then has to
well, all I say is
answer to. I
our
guess.
acknowledgement fulfills the condition. I don't say that we agree. If that's what I mean. But I hear you. I'm happy to try to edit it however you would like to make it sound better for you.
What do you think,
we
Lisa?
we could remove it.
What do you think, Lisa?
Well, I just think what she's calling the infraction is the appearance, because she doesn't give any other evidence of any words being said or any other thing besides the appearance. So if that is what she considers the infraction, okay, the appearance is there, however, but because an appearance is not a violation, then
What's an infraction?
Right. So she doesn't. She that's a new word she puts in the site. I agree with you. Right. I agree with you. It's so again. It speaks to ambiguity of, certainly from our perspective, and since. We didn't have the opportunity to ask her about it directly. This could have been cleared up. She'd be like, "Oh
Right.
no, I just on the record, I want you to know that no, it was the appearance, and so perhaps, You know what I mean? But we're not in that position, so.
Yeah, I'd rather not have that word infraction, not knowing, because it says to the general public that, that we violated,
I
the open
agree.
meeting law, and we
The
didn't.
only thing I can say, right, is that we can't control her narrative. We can only control ours. I hear what you're saying.
But what I'm saying is that, if we note that we do not agree that this was an infraction,
Maybe we just add those words.
yeah. Because we don't.
Right, right.
We don't,
I
and
agree
the
with you,
attorney,
John.
Okay,
assistant
so,
attorney general doesn't think it was either, so.
Right.
about-
An infraction,
although-
if you define the word, is really a violation,
Right.
so.
So at the end of this, what if I do this? We believe this above acknowledgement fulfills condition 1 of the responsive action, although we do not believe any infraction occurred. How about that?
Yep,
Okay.
That's fine.
I agree.
Phone's going crazy here.
Shut this off. Summarize my reading of the complaint too. We did that, so we talked about me speaking to the AG. And so, moving forward, right, so the only thing we haven't touched upon is number 2, Candy's condition number 2. Now, understand, we don't have to, she can put the conditions in there, and we could say, yeah, we're not doing any of that. That's but I just, part of me is in the sense of no harm, no foul. I just don't have an issue with re-educating, doing
have a
further
problem with
work
that
on,
either.
right? And if it puts,
yeah.
it puts Candy at ease, then I
agree.
It's like, it's
Yeah.
just, the penalty isn't,
I don't have a problem
No.
with that.
okay, so.
The training and the sign off is fine.
Perfect. So so to further go on, and we'll read the whole thing all together. Regarding condition 2 of the responsive action requested by Candy LaValle, registrars Fitzgerald, Bonina, and Yates further agree to retake open meeting law training, complete the sign off, and continue our commitment not to express any opinion or engage in deliberation on matters within our body's jurisdiction while a quorum of members is present. So this is just me continue our commitment not to do it, because we have been committed to it. It's just a continuation. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
we are committed to not violating the open meeting law.
Yeah,
Right.
we were
None
on
of
that
us
day,
wanted
and
to
I
do
think
that.
we still
Correct.
are. So
We
it's a
did, I
continuation.
don't think we did do it,
right?
so, yeah.
So if the
continue
board
to-
agrees, I will send. So want me to read the whole thing?
Sure.
Registrars Dan Fitzgerald, John Bonina, and Lisa Yates acknowledge that continuing in conversation after the adjournment of the October 1, 2024 Board of Registrars meeting conveyed the appearance of a potential open meeting law violation. Although the appearance of a violation of open meeting law is not, in fact, a violation of open meeting law, we respect the concern of the complainant, town clerk, and fellow board member Candy LaValle. We believe this above acknowledgement fulfills condition 1 of the responsive action requested in the complaint, although we do not agree any infraction occurred.
We do not acknowledge
Okay, acknowledge, great.
that the infraction occurred.
I'll put infraction in quotes.
Yeah.
Okay, to continue on, regarding condition 2 of the responsive action request by Candy LaValle, Registrars Fitzgerald, Bonina, and Yates further agree to retake the open meeting law training, complete the sign-offs, and continue our commitment not to express any opinion or engage in deliberation on matters within our body's jurisdiction while a quorum of members is present.
Or that would violate the open meeting law.
Okay,
We
so
could add that too, I guess.
I mean, I could put it at the end, in violation of open meeting law.
Right.
Which would violate open meeting law.
Yep, happy to do it. I can do
Yeah.
it that way too.
Yeah.
So I'll read it again. So regarding condition 2 of the responsive action request by Candy LaValle, Registrars Fitzgerald, Bonina, and Yates further agree to retake the open meeting law training, complete the sign-offs, and continue our commitment not to express any opinion or engage in deliberation on matters within our body's jurisdiction while a quorum of members is present. I guess I could put which would violate, so I'll put that here. So it'll read, or engage in deliberation on matters within our body's jurisdiction which would violate open meeting law while a quorum of members is present.
Okay.
How's that?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think as part of this, and I apologize, I should have a better answer for you. So, but I think what we'd need to do is, I'd need to entertain a motion, and we, as considering the narrative that we just discussed and agreed upon, take a motion that we all agree, and that's going to be the official response of the board.
Mhm.
Does that seem right to everyone? Okay.
Sure.
So, I will entertain a motion to accept the agreed upon narrative as the Board of Registrars' official response to the complaint.
I second the motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
You can't do both.
Yeah.
Oh,
I so moved.
Okay. John, so
got it.
John will move the motion
Yeah.
and you second. So, okay. So any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Nay. The ayes have it.
So do we now need to sign? How does it, how does
You know,
it-
she told me, I said, so is there a form that I'm supposed to send?
Yeah.
She goes, no, just send me an email. It seems pretty,
Oh.
I know a lot of this seems really formal, but she said send an email.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I guess we could draft something up, but, so
Okay.
for expediency reasons, you know what I mean, John, to address your thing, you know, today, great, I'm gonna send an email today,
You're gonna send her that in an email.
Yep,
Yeah.
and Candy too.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
Alright.
And CCSO.
yep, absolutely.
Okay.
You bet I will. Okay, I think that takes care of that. All right, moving along. Discuss and possibly act on national change of address complaint. So does anyone want to wade into the NCOA complaint?
Sounds like a moot issue to me.
Okay.
I don't see any reason to even need to discuss it. It's found, that because this person was not a member of the town and is also not making this complaint within the appropriate timelines, that it's not an acknowledged complaint.
Okay. I don't think the issue was a timeline issue. So the way I read it was that they talk about a 90-day quiet period.
Yeah.
So I think I understand that to be, and that is in the federal law, the federal voter law. The 90-day quiet period has to do with 90 days before an election.
Mm-hmm.
It also in there uses the word a systematic removal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hear what you're saying, John. It's like the thing that I got conflicted about is the Supreme Court has also ruled on the state of Virginia the same kind of issue, which is in the Virginia. Some of the people in Virginia, or the defense of it was of not to remove the people was, well, they were in that 90-day window, but the Supreme Court found that for whatever reason, the 90-day window did not apply to how the state of Virginia removed those voters. And I believe. Go ahead.
It was because it was not a systematic change. It was because each of the people were asked if they were citizens or not, and they were said no, they were not. But then
Okay.
they were put on the list in error, and so it was not a system error. It was handled individually
Okay.
for each person.
I know we're getting a little bit in the weeds here, and
Well,
but it
I
wasn't
was
a
just
system-
reading the law, and
Yeah.
the law, as I read it, was
Yep.
that nobody can be removed from the voting list less than 90 days before a federal general election. The state must complete any systemic removal program based on change of address for the federal election cycle no later than 90 days. Okay, and then the only exception to that would be to the death of the registrar, criminal conviction, or mental incapacity, as provided by state law. So he did not. This complainant was within the 90-day period. And he was not indicating that these people were dead or mentally incapacitated or criminally convicted of any crime.
Okay. I guess one of the things that I kind of thought about too was, so if in referring to the complaint, so we have that issue. I tried to see if there was any case law with regards to not being a Grafton resident. I could not, and so I'm curious about that. So there's, because the law says registered voter, it does not talk about town, what town you're from. So we didn't actually. I guess we could ask to have town council weigh in on that piece, but they don't give case law. So I don't mean to get too legalistic, but really, the law as it's written doesn't say town of Grafton. But either way, right? So, but
Well, okay, yeah. So you're saying there were no state laws that indicate it yet. Who was there was somebody that I guess it was Candy that made that last statement here. Based on the election division, the complaint is within 90-day quiet period, number one. And she's saying that it does require, according to general laws, chapter 51, section 48.
all right. So I have a copy of 5148 right in front of me. I'm going to read you exactly what the law says.
Okay.
Upon complaint signed and sworn by a registered voter. It doesn't say registered voter in the town where the complaint is being filed. I understand, and I don't have to get bogged down.
I didn't look up the law.
Sure.
So,
I put it in
Yeah.
the packet, so it was in there. I don't mean to get bogged down in it. You know what I mean? I just think since the Supreme Court has kind of looked at it and said, yeah, no, it's, but I hear what you're saying. I really do, right? So,
Yeah.
so the complainant have standing as a non-Grafton voter? Let's say that he doesn't. Let's say that we agree that what the legalese that has come down from the state is like, he has no standing. Okay, let's say we agree. The 90-day quiet period and effective removal of the voter is not derived from a systematic removal. Let's say that we agree that they're inside the 90-day window. Let's say that, that we agree with that. It's just like, the point to that is we are now outside of that 90-day window. And I think that was in the correspondence Candy got from the legal people, right? It's just like, okay, it is no longer 90 days before an election. We've had the election.
but he filed the complaint
I agree with you.
90
For the
day,
purpose
within
of this,
90
yep,
days,
for the
which
purposes
is a
of,
violation
yep,
of the law.
Yep.
Right.
For the purposes of this complaint, you could say it's invalid for two reasons. Not a registered Grafton voter, and the complaint was filed within that 90-day window
That's right.
of what the federal law would indicate is the quiet period.
Right.
Perfect. Even if we agree to both of those disqualified items, does this board feel as though the information provided is something that we should just ignore? I mean, I guess that's my question. It's legally easy to go to say, well, these things were not met. However, it doesn't address the body of the information provided, which is, according to the information this person provided, a federal database says that these people who are on the Grafton voter rolls are actually live in another place. That's really, that's the crux of this person's complaint.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess the question is, what is the state of Massachusetts process for handling this type of situation where people move? Some states report back to Massachusetts
Yep.
when they get somebody registered.
Yep.
Others don't. So I don't know what the normal process is. Is it possible that in our current state and federal structure, the way it is, that there's going to be people, a certain number of people that are always going to be potentially registered in two places, and that needs to be fixed at a state level or federal
From
level.
what I understood, and I wish Candy were here to address this,
Sure.
But from what she had said is that there are checks and balances in the system, including local and state level, that would discount a voter from being registered in two places. You know, that are
Right.
computerized, that are, digitized.
And so why do these people show up on this? You know,
Yeah.
and why is it that if it's,
I think
If it's that-
there is, but I think there's a lapse, because I remember asking, Candy one other time about it. And, we do that town census once a year. If somebody moves, unless they come and say, hey, I'm moving, take me off the voter roll, when I remember Candy saying, when that census gets sent out to the address of the person, and they're no longer living there, and it gets sent back or whatever, that's how they find out that somebody is no longer
But I think,
there, and that's when the change. But there's a gap of time when that happens, potentially from when they move to when that census is done. So I don't know how the state handles that time gap.
I think that, what she was saying is that, the voter list that is going to show up at the poll is, well, okay, so I see what you're saying, that there could be somebody who moved to another section of town, a different street or whatever, but they're going to have the old street address, not the new street address they moved to,
So here's an example.
unless
Yeah.
they re-register.
Well, that's it. You can have somebody, say a child, over 18, they move and they're now living somewhere else. They're still registered in Grafton because they didn't come in and say, hey, I'm moving. So they're still registered here, but now they're also, maybe they moved to New York. Went to school there, stayed there. And maybe they registered there. If New York is not one of the states that reports back to Massachusetts that the person has registered to be taken off of our rolls, because not all states do that, then they will be allowed to register in New York. And so they'll be registered in two different places. And the only time that'll be caught in Massachusetts is when that census goes out to that address, and I get the census and I say, yep, she's not, not living here anymore, they're in New York, whatever. And that's when that's when Candy would know to take it off the rolls. But from what I understand, there's no way to know. There's definitely a gap in time, and I don't know how the state is working to manage that gap.
That's a question for the state, I think.
Right.
well, we can say that, but really, it's the state relies on the towns to, and they rely on us. The state does rely on the towns. It really does rely on the towns too. I realize there's a back and forth there, but it also relies on the towns to, take a look at your rolls, and really us. That's our responsibility. Those voter rolls are the Board of Registrars' responsibility.
Right.
Right.
And that's what the census is for. But we only
Correct.
send out a census once a year.
Correct. Right, and so
So we're doing
it's-
our part, but you
Well-
have to wait until you get that to be able to correct things.
So I guess I guess, and it's in some of the, also included in this packet, right, was what they did in another town, really, right? And so the lawyer there, right, it was a residency issue. This was the same problem. Some of the people didn't live in that town, which is what this complaint kind of alleges, is that, not kind of, does allege. These people don't live in your town. And so I thought it was really good what this lawyer, the Troyer lawyer, wrote with regards to, that first page, basic election law issues. I think that's really good reading for us to look at. But on page 2, he talks about registrars look further into this allegation. Let me just go back a little bit. The complaint is not asking that we remove the voters. That's not what the complaint is. The complaint, so we're clear, is it in the law that the complainant referred to is asks us to just examine into such a complaint. That's all this really is at this point. It's asking the registrars to take a look at it, examine into, it's weird wording, but examine into the complaint. It's not saying in the complaint letter, it doesn't say remove,
Yeah.
I demand you remove, they shouldn't be on here. I think he even says it in the letter itself. I know, only requires this complaint state sufficient grounds, right? So if we look at the complaint, it's like, do we feel that the federal database is sufficient grounds. Someone that shows up that says they affirmatively filled out a form that said, I now live here. Do we feel is that sufficient grounds? That's all he has to, that's all he's required to do under 5148 really is just say, this is sufficient grounds. And so that would be one of the matters we would need to think about to say, do we feel that that's sufficient grounds? And then again, it does talk about, he just wants us to address it, or the law just basically says, yeah, just take a look at it. No one's asking to get anyone removed. So I guess that leads me to believe, is there a process that's available to us that will allow somehow for us to take a look at the names that were provided on that complaint and reach out to those people and say, could you please let us know whether you're still, if you live in Grafton, if you're a registered voter, so forth and so on. So I used the back page. I didn't have a ton of time, but I did look at the complaint, some of the items in the complaint towards the back page. I will say this. So some of the flaws in it. The database talks about people that originally had a Grafton address. So really the evidence or the form that they provide, they give a name. They give the address that they are allegedly registered in Grafton, and then they give an address that they're registered in the other place where they filed the form and said, nope, I live here now. Okay? So one of the problems with the complaint is you have people on here that, so this, I won't use names, but this gentleman, there's a gentleman here. He lives at Veteran Circle in Grafton. Well, he then moved to an address in South Grafton. Right? And so the issue with that is he's still a Grafton voter. Grafton isn't different. South Grafton and North Grafton aren't different. Right, it's still our town.
Right.
That's not always the case in some towns where the North designates a completely different town. And so this is kind of maybe the drawback of this national voter
It
registration
needs
where
to be scrubbed.
yep, these names get kicked out. It's just like, nope, no, that person still is a Grafton voter, so we can't, we have no intention of reaching out to that person. He still lives in Grafton. And I assume internally, the rules may reflect that.
But if they moved to, it would be easier to identify this if they moved within town. But I think the issue of moving out of state or something makes it much more complicated. I mean, if he moves in town and he tries to re-register, that would be a red flag. Because that's the clerk's office.
Yeah, they'll see that,
Yeah.
Well, he wouldn't have to re-register because you're in Grafton. You're in Grafton.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that. I
Sure.
lived in North Grafton and then I
Yeah.
moved
But
to.
if the name showed up twice on the voter rolls, then they would be able to pick
right.
that up pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
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 And
Candy's indicated that before. Yeah.
Candy's role is to do that. She can do that pretty easily. So there'd be very low risk of somebody voting twice in town.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So it's
right. So I think that the in-town switch probably
it's not
a
Yeah.
worry.
Yeah, or
Let's
even in
just say that it
state.
is.
Even in state, I would.
In state would be, to me, that's a little bit of a different. That's definitely a different bit of an animal when you talk about in state. If because I think we're still unclear on what the state actually does when these people go from town A to town B.
But they register within the state of Massachusetts for their
Yep.
town, so it's the state's responsibility to pick that up. I would think that if somebody's registering, it should. I mean, they're looking at a voter roll that would show the same name.
I agree with you with regards to that. I think what I continue to kind of go back on, because we cannot, this board cannot go into the VERIS system, the VRIS system, that we have access to as registrars, that we can't physically, this is kind of, to me, like, we could go in there. And so, to your point, it's just like, so here's a gentleman, he moves from Grafton to Mendon. I should be able to go into VRIS, put this name in, and it'll pop out where this person is a registered. If the state database says no, he's registered in Mendon, but I go into the Grafton voter rolls and go, nope, he's active on our rolls.
But I assume
somebody did not remove him from Grafton.
right.
So this is the dilemma, right? It's just like the efficiency with which home base here is able to do that. That's really our job, and we rely on the personnel in the clerk's office to kind of do a job we are responsible for. And and so then it just becomes a question of, okay, they overtaxed, and are they capable to do it?
Well, that's, our job is oversight, I think, too, I mean, so we're working with Candy to find out how this can change within the structure of her office, because she's ultimately got the staff to be able to manage this. So,
I don't think our job is oversight, Jack. It really is addressing. This is, that's why the complaint came to the Board of Registrars. That's, the complaint
Right,
didn't
but-
come to Candy, and it's
I agree.
that's our job.
It's our job, but
Yep.
it's not our job to actually make that happen. It's to make sure that it happens. That's what I mean by oversight.
I see. This is so
It
you
can
and
go
I.
both ways. I think
Yeah, I think so too.
some registrars do have access to Verus, and they actually do this type of work.
Okay.
Not everywhere. Generally, smaller towns, the town clerk does it all. So, yeah, it can be. Yeah, it can be either way.
One of the things, and getting back to, and I know we're jumping around a little bit, but if you do get back to that lawyer, one of in the advice that happened with regards to Truro. Registrars look further into the allegation after, for them, it was town meeting, and bring their own complaint challenging residency pursuant to 5147. So, if our board felt as though that there was enough information, and they did do this, that the people on whatever's presented to us as evidence they no longer live in Grafton, we could actually convene a residency hearing. This board has the right to convene a residency hearing. It's I've read a little bit into it. It's just like that means summonses go out to people and they need to appear. I've watched other residency hearings that occur. I'm not suggesting we do that. I'm just that's in here. Registrars asked, so advice number 2 from this town lawyer. Registrars asked town clerk about flagging voters where the board has concerns, such as asking for ID. Flagging, right? And so that seems minimal. We're not removing them. We didn't, but we asked the town clerk about flagging voters where we have concerns, such as asking for ID. So if we make a determination that's like, yep, this person says they're in 2 places. Can you get ID from them? If it's I don't know the process there, right? If Candy was here, she could say, gee, how can we do that? Can we do that? It's just like it's not clear. The lawyer doesn't give specific mechanisms to go ahead and do that, but fair enough, right? Ask the town clerk. Registrars ask the town clerk to challenge voters at the polls based on facts and personal and specific. Okay, same idea. It seems a little bit more aggressive. You're challenging now at the polls. I'm not necessarily saying that's or the registrars could refer issue to the DA. I don't have an interest in referring it to the DA. I thought, and it wasn't listed in here, but let's say that I think step number 1, my thought is go through that list. Go through the names that were presented to us and rule out, which I did. I think I mentioned to you guys. I did do that for let's see. I did a total of, from the list that was presented, I went through 37 names. It happened to be the last page and the very last page, second to last and last. I went through 37 names. 18 of those folks are in Grafton, right? So the address went from, according to the national database, it went from they live in Grafton, they moved to South Grafton. Not a problem. For the it potentially maybe, yeah, but not for us. It's like we feel pretty confident, I think, in talking to Candy, that's an internal Grafton to Grafton matter, and chances are they're going to take care of that internally. Like we feel kind of confident that that's going to happen, right? 12 of the 37 were not on the list. We're not on the Grafton voter roll. So just so you guys are aware, and we have a right to the voter rolls, and we could ask, and again, we would have, if we had access to Verus, we could read them every day. Every change made, every day we could go in there. It's been a sticking point, we do not. But I will say Candy's been very good. When I've asked her for rolls, she gives them to me. So foreseeing this was coming, I asked for voter rolls, well, not foreseeing it, seeing that we were here, even though it was a little bit later. I asked for the voter rolls that were used the day of the election, right? So an updated list. So I had an updated list of what the town of Grafton says is on November 5th, a few days ago, what it was. And it's important that we keep, getting newer versions. So something like this, it's mentioned from the advice from the, whether it was the state or whatever, the list is stale. okay, like, you know, I understand that concern. But what I used for the rolls was not still. That was that day. Anyway, so let's get back. So 8 still live in Grafton. 12 are not on the Grafton voter rolls. So 12 people identified in this complaint are no longer, of the 37, are no longer on the rolls.
It was
So
cleaned
something
up.
happened,
Yep.
right? Someone took care
That's
of it.
good.
Right?
All right.
Right? Perfect.
That makes,
Yep.
17 of them are still on the list, if listed as active voters. So 17 of the 37 that I looked at are still on the Grafton voter rolls.
And
That's 46%. There are 400, I think someone, I didn't count them, so I guess I should have.
46% of the 37
46%, yes, in that small sample.
right.
Yeah.
Right,
That's
in
what I'm
that small
saying, right.
sample.
in the small sample.
And I'm not saying, so maybe I hit all, like, you know, it is true, right? Maybe I hit off, these are the only ones. And if I did every other one, nope, remove. I get that. And I'm not saying it's fair to say, okay, so, but if you do look at it as, I realize it's a small sample, but if you did look at it at 46%, you know, let's round it up to 50 just because, and if there's and there's 400 names, and again, I can't confirm that, but however many names, you know, half of them, so you have 200 people that need to be removed from the rolls, close to it, a little less, but, you know, I just feel like that's a concern we should have. That should be, I getting through all the other stuff, it's not a legal complaint, it's just, I appreciate that, but so what are we going to do about the fact that we do have this list of names, and some of them, in the small sample I checked, are clearly shouldn't be on our rolls, or there needs to be further review of how it is they're still on our rolls when they say, and obviously I didn't check to, you know, where their new place is, but they're on our rolls, and according to this, they've since moved along. The other piece to this was, I believe it said something in there about after 6 months. So we talked a little bit about the 6-month rule about if you leave Grafton and you go someplace else, you'd have 6 months from when you maintain that new residence to still come back to Grafton and vote if you wanted to. The illegality, as far as I understand, is if they vote twice. Right, that is really and we don't. I'm not saying, you know, I don't know how we would go about that part. I'm not looking to. So I think when the lawyer from Truro says, talk to the DA, we don't. It's not a crime here. As far as we know, there's no crime. I'm not looking to go. Okay, this guy.
Yeah.
I'm not asking that we bring it that far. I guess what I'm asking is, could we review the names, and certainly we could do it as a board, maybe not together or individually. It's like, Jack, take voters 1 through 150. Lisa, take voters 151 to 3. You know what I mean? And we could take a look at it. Rolls are our thing. We could take a look, and we could kind of do what I did in a subset. And if that's something that, you know, you guys aren't comfortable to doing, you know, I'll sit with you. The two of us, that isn't a problem. The two of us can sit someplace, take some time, and go through it. Or, you know, we could certainly.
Isn't this automated? I mean, can't they figure it out in the office about looking at duplicate names, which is what you did, right?
No, understand this. Duplicate names was the older issue. Right? They all fall into the same things, which is people are on voter rolls, whether it's under a different name. This is not duplicate names, right? This is someone that they say lives someplace else.
Okay.
I agree with you. The duplicates, again, and so we know from our last meeting, right, that the meeting prior to that, we brought it to the clerk's attention. And the next meeting, I did the same thing. I went through the rows. It's like, okay, it looked like 40% had been removed. There's still 60% of the dupes was still on there. And so, you know, the board felt as though, yeah, they're making progress, right? And Candy seemed to say, yeah, you know, we're trying.
Yeah.
I get that part, right? You know, and I guess at some point, though, is it just they're just so busy in there that maybe this is something that we are authorized to do and we should do it. Then we go through the list, we go, hey, these are these people, you know, whether we want to turn it over then to the clerk and go, we went through it, these are people that shouldn't be on our voter rolls, or it seems they shouldn't be, what do you want to do? And I think the answer is send postcards. I believe, I just don't know, and if Candy gets here she could tell us, but I believe there is a postcard that you send to a voter and says, as it stands right now, we have some concerns about your whatever it reads. I don't even know what it reads, but and then they would sign the postcard and send it back. Yes, so like, you know, just for this guy, sir, we have your address now as XY50 Main Street in Mendon. So we send the card to the Main Street Mendon address. Do you live in Mendon? Are you, you know, only because we feel the breakdown between the clerk of Mendon and the clerk of Grafton isn't so good. So, and he could respond. Candy talked about signatures, right? No, they need to respond. You know, I need a signature to remove them. Well, that's what the card does. They sign the card, they return it. They say whether they were to say, no, I did move them in, but I still live in Grafton. I should be on your rolls. Or yes, I live in Mendon now. I mean, that's the big issue here, right? People move and they don't notify the clerk that they've moved. And so what does the clerk need? Well, Candy's mentioned to this test. She wants a signature from that person to say, I no longer live here. This is what that postcard does.
So there definitely has to be a signature. If she identifies, I guess the only ones would be if a person has a criminal activity or mentally incapacitated or has died. Those are the only ones that Candy can remove without a signature?
That's her feeling about it. That's her feeling about it,
Okay.
right? So we talked about the what other avenues do you have? This board could call a residency hearing. We don't need anyone's signature to them. We summons them in, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the more intrusive,
Sure.
Right.
right? In my opinion.
Or we
I just
could-
think this
or
is
we
a
could-
simple.
We
Go ahead,
could
sorry.
also, if we know where they moved to, we could alert the clerk in that town or the board of registrars in that town that they are showing up on our rolls
Right.
and to be aware that, you know, the person needs to alert us. That might be a better way to go because when you start mailing things out and having people send them back, it's like the response rate on survey kind of stuff is really bad. And so, but I mean, that's the end process. The beginning process is to identify people, is what you're saying. And then we need to figure out what's the next step.
Agreed. And you know, and so do we think this is valid? Is this information provided in this complaint valid information? I mean, he affirms and swears to that this is information provided to him. I've heard, like, in looking at some of my other stuff, I know this exists.
But that's kind of a moot issue, I think.
Okay.
I think what it does say to us is it alerts us to the fact that we need to be vigilant about, updating our voter rolls.
Agreed.
And that comes into our role. And what happens with this particular complaint is irrelevant, I think, as much as it alerts us to, we need to talk to Candy about how do we as a board work with her to make sure that our voter rolls are updated.
Yeah, and I guess I hear what you're saying. It seems that we've taken this track, though, right? How do we work with her and her staff? Well, we haven't been asked to go in there. We haven't been given Veris authorization. At some point, I'm just wondering whether this board says, no, we'll take this work upon ourselves. We don't need permission from the town clerk to take a look at voter rolls. That's our job.
I agree.
Right?
But what we need to do, since they are paid staff, we need to institutionalize the process.
Okay.
I think, of making sure that, our voter rolls are updated. That's our role. So, rather than us taking over that role, which is not institutionalizing it because we'll be a new board at some point, but we have paid staff in town that it's their responsibility to oversee the voter rolls, to make sure that the functional part of it, the task part of it happens, but it's our role to make sure that happens.
I think Candy does that as a town clerk on the board's behalf.
Correct.
Yes.
Is how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, but we need,
Yeah.
as the board, we need to make sure that that's happening in a cooperative way, obviously, with Candy's office. But
I think the complainants would disagree with this cooperative piece of, so let's look at the history of, like, presented duplicates, and again, I appreciate that we're working at it, but I think a complainant would disagree and say, I'm not, the sanctity of a voter roll shouldn't depend on a slow acting clerk's office to take care of it. Their words, not mine, right? But if you're the complainant, you go, no, it's your problem. You're the board of registrars. You need to take care of it. And again, it becomes a question of how fast, or what are we doing as a board to move forward, or to move the ball forward, to relieve a citizen. And again, let's say tomorrow a citizen from Grafton files, and we're in the same boat. And so now it's just like, what are we
Right.
doing to relieve their concerns about a corrupted voter roll?
there's things that we could do. I mean, we could ask that as a standing part of our agenda, we could have an updated agenda item on voter rolls, okay? And we couldn't talk about those people that should have been removed. Where do they stand this month, I mean, that's our role as oversight, I think, in working with Candy. I don't see us actually doing the work because, we're doing the work through her, but we don't have to actually we're volunteers, we're,
I understand that.
Yeah.
I do, but you still have the authority. I
Sure.
understand what you're
I mean,
saying,
but-
and I'm not trying to drag you into it. What if I said to you, I'm going to go through this entire list that was provided, and in our next meeting, I'm going to give you the names of the people. I'm going to do just what I did with that small subset, but then I'm going to provide you those names. I guess what you're saying is, so then the board would have names, certainly of this complaint, and then our next meeting, you would say, the clerk's office was provided these names of these people. Where do we stand with them being removed? Or
absolutely,
whatever, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's
So that's us doing something.
that's
You know
our
what I mean?
role, though. That's how I see we can, as oversight, make sure that things are happening on the local level in our town, as the board of registrars, to make sure that our voter rolls are accurate and updated. And we can hold, Candy's a member of this board too, so
Correct.
she has access to that information. She's providing it to the rest of us, to review it and inform us as to, the status of her work.
Okay. And she's not here. We can't ask her if she would
Yeah.
agree to that. And so I guess we'll leave it as I guess some of the question now is how do you want to respond to the complaint, and do we want to? I know that the advice was that you don't have to respond. Does the board feel that we do not want to respond to the complaint? And even if it's just to say what we just agreed to is we're going to try to do better with communication with the clerk's office in order to take a look at some of the people, I mean, we could even say some of the names you provided in the complaint were these people just moved from Grafton to Grafton. Even if it's a simple explanation letter to say, so they're not really, other people have been removed. So your complaint is stale. Like, or whatever. Somehow they were moved. Whether Candy would know whether I went through the entire list and said, do you know when this person was removed and how? Like, I don't know I don't need to get into the deepness of it. I think the concern is
I
they're
don't
still
think
on the
we
list.
even need to, because he didn't follow the rules, the laws, I should say. That I don't think that the advice to us was that we don't really even have to respond to it. But the way we want to respond to it is that, okay, this alerts us to the fact that we have to do something different, even though he's out of the timelines that are required. It makes the complaint not an issue, but it does educate us to the fact that, well, okay, maybe we need to look at this further, and we will establish within our procedures a more clear process of reviewing
Okay.
things.
I don't think there's a maybe about it. I'd like to, I really do feel like, this is something that should be looked
Yeah.
into, especially if,
Well,
that
it's a-
46% turns into whatever it might be. And that, and, and what about, yeah, so
It's
that
definitely
should be
alerted us
continually
to.
changing, right?
Yeah.
People will continue to move into town and out of town. This
Right.
goes back to the people that no longer live at Crescent Street, right? So the three things, we had duplicates, we had people that are no longer residents at Crescent Street, now we have this. It seems like, there is some momentum or certainly some concern that the voter rolls, again,
Sure. And I do see that as our job.
yeah,
To
absolutely.
make sure that.
There's no doubt about it.
That as the Board of Registrars, that we're making sure that our voter rolls are up to date.
Okay.
I absolutely have no problem with that. I just don't think that we have to do it ourselves. We should be working with Candy in her office to make sure that they are actually doing that.
Okay. Lisa,
And
anything?
if they are having trouble doing it, I would assume then it's our job to alert the select board that they need more help in doing this, or they need upgraded computer systems to do this, so we're identifying problems if it's not happening, so that they can be rectified within the town.
I think the bigger piece is going to be a time element. They're too busy in there. Candy's made it, I think that's what
Well,
comes up.
I guess we need to know how it happens, so that
Right.
if she is lacking staff, then we should be advocating to the select board that, her office is not functioning in this way because they're short-staffed, or they don't
Okay.
have the equipment, or, Does that
I hear
make
you.
sense to you, Lisa?
Yeah, I just look at it as if there's a board member who's a volunteer that has access and authority to do that and would be willing to go in a little bit to save the town some money, because I'm a town taxpayer as well.
Yeah.
I don't want to put another person on a payroll that will never go away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it is something that can be done by a volunteer, I mean, how often would this have to be scrubbed? Once every 6 months? Maybe you go in there for 15 minutes once a month because you really don't have that much. I think we're dealing with a lot of activity over time. Once you do an initial scrub, now you're just doing the regular maintenance of it too.
I agree with that.
So
I'm not saying that should
It's-
be our first approach, is to
Yeah.
to advocate for more staff. I'm saying that if it becomes clear
right.
that this is a job that does take a lot of time, and there needs to be some designated staff time to do that. Because we are a growing town too,
Right.
I mean, so
Yeah, I don't think without Candy being here to answer some of the questions,
Yeah,
I don't know if I have
exactly.
enough information to be able to make
yeah,
those decisions. It's like, how much
Right.
time does this take? Do you have the staff? Can you do it? Is it something you want us to help scrub through? Is it something that you can scrub? I mean, I don't know. I guess
agree with
I
you.
would need to have Candy give her input as to,
I'm willing to go into that
Because-
office and go into Veris to like even go through even if, whether it's this batch of names or other batch of names. I'm happy to do it. But I know Candy knows that, and so I know she feels like they're I'm not looking to take away work from her workers.
No.
That as you say are paid workers, but I do feel compelled that we need to address.
yeah. I'd just like to see it institutionalized
I hear you.
rather than
Yep.
just
yeah,
us
Yeah.
jumping
Yep.
in and doing it,
right.
Yeah. So, but, I'm not opposed to helping if need be. But,
Yeah,
Right.
right. I hear that
Yeah.
too. Right, and let's be clear. I'm not gonna if this goes that way, and it's just like, yeah, sure, Dan, come in. I'm not gonna be looking at either of you to say, why aren't you guys helping? It's not gonna be like that. I'm happy to get in there.
Yeah.
You guys, I'm retired. You guys have things to do, and like
Yeah.
And I agree with Lisa. I think once it seems as though there could be a lot of information there that maybe hasn't really been cleaned out over a period of time. And if we can catch up on that,
Yeah.
I think the maintenance piece will be real easy for whoever's involved. The only thing I did want to mention about that, I know the complaint was dated on the 15th, and we it took a couple weeks to get it. I wish we had kind of got it sooner, but again, it'd be good if like timely, especially something that's addressed to our board. But in the end, it didn't make a difference. We had to have our meeting, so it was a little bit later. I was just hopeful that we. Okay, so any further conversation on that? No further discussion. Okay. So that was a long one.
That was-
Discuss delineation of election-related responsibilities between the town clerk and the board. So here's that book. I know, right? So this is what I'm referring to, right? This Board of Registrars, Elections and Commissions.
Okay.
Lisa?
All right. Yep.
And so that really does, especially since it was just recently updated in 2024, that really does. If you guys need me to send, I have it, and I think
I think I
PDF.
extracted.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so
I should
I think it's just a really good delineation of our job compared to Kenny's. Some of it makes me feel like I need to eat a little crow. One of the things talked about one of the duties that is clearly on the clerk: sending and receiving early and absentee ballots and accepting or rejecting them, which really has to do with signature verification, right? So absentee ballots, sending them out when they come in, right? They're supposed to, and so signature verification, like that's completely on Candy. Like this board has no business wandering into signature verification. You know what I mean? Testing voting equipment. I know we talked about it at our last meeting, completely under the purview of the clerk. Like we don't, although I do remember, I thought I didn't see that we posted it. And I know Candy didn't shoot us. I thought from our last meeting we had touched on if anyone wanted to see the testing graph. And I know other towns posted it on their website that say, hey, we're testing machines today. And I thought Candy was going to reach out to us. But so I don't really know if they did the testing or we just didn't. But anyway, that's completely her purview too. Certifying elections. I don't know if it came up in this board, but We have nothing to do with certifying elections. That's
Right.
completely
Yeah,
on the
we've
town.
discussed
That's
that.
not Board of Registrars.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
completely Katie. So,
Yep.
but some of the stuff that's interesting to kind of speak to some of the stuff we've been talking about, maintaining the voter list by updating names, addresses, and party enrollment, making corrections, and removing voters who are deceased or have moved. That is our job. That is in that book listed
Yep.
under the job of the board, not of the clerk,
Right.
of the board. Sending acknowledgments and rejection notices to voters, our job. Considering objections to voter registrations, right, which basically is that complaint. That's our job. Requesting a list of poll workers, I get that. We've already kind of touched on the different other election officers, overseeing and administering in-person early voting. That was a new one to me. With other overseeing and administering in-person early, we haven't really done that, and I'm like, but it's just food for thought. I don't.
Well, we approved early
We
voting
did,
sites,
Yeah.
and
But
you
to
know,
me, that's not. This seems a little bit more
making sure that things were gonna
overseeing
happen.
and administering in person. But she's a registrar, right? So
Right.
that's
her
probably
job.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
that's she's
She's
able
doing it
to
on
wear
our
both those
behalf.
hats. Correct.
On our behalf,
Right.
right.
Got it. Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
Any further discussion on item 6?
No,
All right.
me?
Item 7, discuss documents requests from the Board of Registrars to the town clerk. I just wanted to, we've touched on a little bit, for me, was really the voter rolls, right? And so because we at this point don't have access to Veris, and as I said before, Candy's very good at it's like, I ask it, I get it the next day. So that part of it's good. But if either of you feel like you want a copy or whatever, I guess we could communicate better and just saying, hey, I have the next copy of the voter rolls. If you guys would like it, I'm happy to send it to you. She sends it in a PDF typically.
Okay.
So again, this is I get it. I dive a little bit deeper, and if you guys aren't interested in that, I completely understand. Any thoughts on that, or any further discussion on our request?
This goes
of the
back
board?
to, I think, what we were talking about a few minutes ago,
Yeah.
which was, if this is in fact our role to maintain an accurate list of registered voters in town, it should be an ongoing agenda item in which we have that information available to us so that we can get a report from Candy to see what has been
Yeah.
removed and what hasn't. I think that's
Right.
That's a
should-
good one. I wonder.
The
I could
status
look
of the
into
voter roll.
subcommittee.
Right.
Maybe some boards have subcommittees, even if it's one person. So you could be like maybe John, you're going to be the subcommittee of. I don't know what it would entail otherwise, other than just you. We make sure it's on the agenda and there's a check-in, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
but obviously, it sounds with regards to that, we're going to have to know. We're going to have to identify what I'll use the word as the targets that we feel could be questionable as being on the rolls. You know what I mean? We're still going to have to identify those people. It seems as though, unless you feel as though, no, let her identify them. But that's the disconnect I think we're facing.
Well,
now.
I think we should have updated lists available to us so that we can question,
Yeah.
with it with her staff's help, identifying people who should have been removed from the list because they moved,
Right.
died, or whatever reason, so I think it's we need to have that information.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think it's our responsibility to go get it, but I think we need to ask for it.
I hear you. So maybe the easier answer is, could she provide us every meeting or monthly the list of people that have been removed?
It seems to
You know
be
what I
a
mean?
fundamental role for us to make sure that our
Yeah.
voting lists are
No
updated.
doubt.
So,
Sure.
so I think that should be an ongoing agenda item every month.
Okay.
You know,
Lisa, any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I like that. We can.
Yeah.
I don't know how we'll
Status
word
of
it,
the
but
voter
if John,
rolls.
if you have any thoughts on how you want to word it, it seems simple enough, but I don't
Yeah.
want to. I love it.
I'll bring it up.
Okay, perfect.
The next time we meet.
So October 1 meeting minutes. Candy's really. I just put it on there as more of a reminder to ourselves that we have to get our minutes get them up. They were really busy. I know with the election, I know she didn't have. I'm guessing she had much better things, and it's not like we're out of compliance or whatever because we didn't do the meetings. It was just more of a refresher. The other thing was, with the same regard, we did approve the July minutes. Those have not been posted yet. So, just but again, the office has been completely busy. I completely understand. Item 9, unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business that we've had in the past that anyone would like to touch upon?
Jeez.
It's okay. Like,
I don't.
Let's see.
I don't think so. Nothing comes to my mind.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Right, so I had, in the Wayback Machine, Registrars utilization for tasks on election day. We talked about that in a March meeting. We weren't utilized for this past election, and again, I should have looked to see what it is we were hoping to, but we did talk about being utilized on election day. Some of it's conflict of interest. I know there was a video of a registrar from of another town being handed ballots into their car. So sometimes the registrars deliver ballots which caused problems. Like people like, they're unsecured. It was really deep. It was kind of a hubbubaloo. So part of me is thinking like, we're better off just making sure we stay out of the mix. Plus two, it gives us the availability if there is a problem. That we're impartial and we don't have to recuse ourselves from any type of other stuff that goes on. So,
Yeah.
but we did talk about it, and that's I think one of the only things. Voting
Yeah.
machines we talked about, the minutes we touched on that, the October minutes, the July 31st, 2024 minutes we approved, and so we touched on that.
Okay.
Unposted minutes from that November 16th, 2020 meeting. We talked about that at our last meeting. That still is going to need to be addressed. That came up in the open meeting law training learning about it, because that could be a potential complaint of open meeting law. If they ask for a copy of those, if someone was to ask for a copy of those meeting minutes and we couldn't produce them, we're in violation. So just, it's fine. I know we'll get to it.
Okay.
Let's see. Item 10, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair. So I think we're right to say that Candy's not here today because our election is getting audited. They're from the other day, right? It's
One of the precincts is being.
one of the precincts
random
is.
audit, yep.
So Candy sent us an email. I'll not be able to attend the meeting tomorrow. We're selected to have one of our precincts audited for post-election audit, and the state is holding sessions that I need to be a part of, coordinating workers and setting up the gym for Tuesday morning. So we know that Candy did a great job. She already put that meeting on the agenda, and she already let us know that it was going to happen.
Yep.
As mentioned in a prior email, the board will not. But this was new. As mentioned in a prior email, the board will have to be present unless you choose to designate me, and then you do not have to be present. So I looked into that. That actually happens to be in some of the literature. It's actually, let's see. It's actually in this post-election audit overview,
Okay.
right? That was from that. I think I sent it out, right? It's just the information about what is going to happen, and I couldn't read through it, but this tells us everything we need to know about what is occurring in Grafton. Post-election audit interview, drawing will be held on or before November 7th. 3% of the precincts are selected, and it goes through it, pretty extensively. But one of the things with regards to Candy mentioning designate her, I didn't know we could do that.
I didn't know either.
So in this packet, it talks about it. Registrars can designate a local election official to conduct the audit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was actually looking forward to being part of it and learning, seeing the process myself. I mean,
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I just wanted us to be
I didn't know,
informed,
yeah.
right? That that's in this packet, and we could potentially do that. And so,
we need to have a quorum to do that. So that's
which we do.
we would, yeah. If
Yep.
you and I and would Candy be considered?
Okay,
part of it,
so
or
what
because
you're
she's
saying-
clerk.
Yep, she is. Yep,
So-
even though she's a clerk, she's
Right.
still right.
Okay.
So
'Cause
if
that would be my only question: is do
Yep.
we have to give her permission because
We
the
don't, we're
two
not-
of us,
yeah.
two others of us would not be able to attend for a quorum?
Yeah.
that would be a problem.
Right.
She might almost not demand it, but she might say, "Hey, look, the way we can get around this problem is
Yeah.
designate me," but would have to do it. So it's not clear as to how we designate her. But my thought would be we'd designate her at a meeting like this meeting. You know what I mean?
Right,
Where we
right.
would say, right, and so we could make a motion. So I kind of thought ahead a little bit. Couple things. Turning the operation over to Candy, in my opinion, requires a motion and a vote to do so, and would relegate the appointed registrars, the three of us, to observer status. So the public can go and watch this audit. But we would, if we gave the authority to Candy to take over it, like official, right, we would be relegated to the public, which is outside the guardrails. We could watch, we could go, because we're still citizens,
Right.
but would have no oversight, right, thought on that.
Well-
So my thought would be, if we felt like we wanted to do, and I'm with you, Lisa. I'd like to go. I have no, you know what I mean. I'm not
I
trying to
already
bail
blocked
out of
it
it.
out.
It's
Yeah.
just when in her email when she chose to designate me, I had no idea what she was talking about. So, and it is so. If this would be the potential motion, I move the Board of Registrars designate fellow registrar and town clerk Candy LaValle to conduct the state post-election audit currently scheduled for 10 a.m. on November 12th and needing to be completed on or before November 19th. That would, you know, I mean, I felt like it would at least, depending on how we all felt, it's like if we needed to do it, we could do it right now and make a motion on it, and then vote on it, you know, and that would give her, that would be the way to sanction her to do it. You know what I mean?
But we, I mean, we might do that next time, but
Yeah,
since we've already
Sure.
designated
I
the
completely
time.
agree, and we
Right.
might not. I want to go. I haven't seen one of these in
Yeah.
my time on the board. I haven't seen one, so I'm excited to go. Again, it was just more of a
Right.
let's not get caught off
So
guard
that's
here.
Tuesday. What audit is she going to today that she
Today's
No, so
the
she's
prep for it.
prep for it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So,
You
yeah.
know, the state is holding session. She needs to be a part of coordinating workers and setting up the gym for Tuesday morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
that's that.
Yeah.
So good. So
Yeah.
so we're not going to need that motion, and so that's perfect.
All right.
Topics not easily
We
anticipated.
just need to know the details. When do we need to show up? Where?
10 o'clock.
Is there
I know
anything-
she's.
There are agendas that were posted
Yep.
on the website.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And I printed them out. It's Tuesday at 10 a.m. at the Municipal Center Gymnasium.
Yep. Municipal Center Gym.
Yeah. And-
I will be there. So.
I have it written in, so
yeah.
I know.
I'm planning on being there.
Yeah, it'll be, you know, it'll be interesting. You know, clearly we're gonna. I know my feeling is I'm taking a step back, and Candy's gonna do. You know, she'll be. It'll be interesting if she needs to utilize me for anything. I'm happy to do it. But. Okay, that's it for our topics and anything reasonably anticipated by the chair. So I think we're set to adjourn.
Yes. So
Agree.
moved.
All right. So if there's no further business, I declare this meeting adjourned. The time is 1:34.